to the questions asked, and any other further comments they wish to make?
Thank you, Chairman Daly. Again, Patrick Robinson on behalf of North Point Development. And I took notes as profusely as I could, and will do my best to, respond to each of the items that came up. The first speaker referenced their address on Moonlight, and there were a host of folks that live on Moonlight, and there's all of these discussions about infrastructure. I would point out that in Gardner's comprehensive plan, since I started working here in 2007, shows Moonlight as a preferred location for an interchange. Like, that has been Gardner's hope forever. So this idea that things are never going to change in rural Johnson County, just like the numerous references to the Carnet plan, that's, there's, for most people that came to Johnson County, you can say, well, I remember when College Boulevard was a gravel road. I remember when 119th and I-35, when there was a truck stop, and the other direction was gravel road, right? So we all have these recollections, and all of these observances of things changing in Johnson County. The reality is, we're in the fastest growing county in Kansas. Yes, things continue to change. Just like the Homestead Lane interchange got constructed, and specific to this application is why this is an absolute appropriate location for this rezoning application. The second speaker spoke about stormwater, and all of these concerns about drinking water as it relates to Hillsdale Lake. Farming operations are much more deleterious, right? Runoff from farm operations, from the herbicides, the pesticides, the phosphorus content that makes algae grow in Hillsdale Lake, those operations are much more detrimental than the best management practices that we employ. And we clean the water as it exits our site. We have to manage the water, and so I would contend, if your call to action here is conservation of Hillsdale Lake, then it's appropriate for this conversion to occur, in particular on these parcels. You hear a number of times during these discussions, we're all for growth, but there's always the but, right? But there's never like an alternative proposed, right? We're the owners of 1,000 acres in this corridor. I know people don't like to hear this, and it might sound harsh, but we have property rights as well. People willingly sold those parcels to us. They willingly sold us parcels right adjacent to the interchange, which is the question here tonight. And the infrastructure is appropriate. So I mean, so you can throw out hypotheticals. We're all for growth. Well, should we ask for a big mobile home park on the 640 acres? Should we ask for a quarry? Should we ask for an asphalt plant? Like, what is appropriate? There is never an alternative proposed. There's a lot of, and there are a lot of observations about, well, hey, I reviewed the Johnson County land use plan, right? You hear that argument a lot. And this shows all this property is RUR. And I know staff noted it, but this is absolutely true. This RUR is a holding designation. It is what the county designates everything in the county that's not in a municipality. The reason they do that is that they believe real estate development activity should happen in the municipalities like Edgerton. So it's a holding designation until annexation and zoning occurs. You can look at it in South Overland Park, South Olathe, pick a spot, you're going to find everything is RUR. That's the county's holding designation. There was, some discussion saying that North Point is cherry picking properties. I explained this last time. If we got to pick on the map and we got to pick the entire 207th Street corridor, we would absolutely do that. I mean, and there's other questions about who pays for the infrastructure. We get the opportunity to pay for that, and if everything works out, we might get a portion of it paid back. So you know, this idea that we can go out and, you know, I had a discussion with one of our other neighbors on our site plan that you'll hear later this evening. They said, well, why can't you just put the road due north? Well, the problem we have there is, well, there's a property owner there with rights as well. So we do our best to get these properties put together, but, you know, to suggest this is cherry picking, I made the offer last time. Anybody that wanted to sell their home, I think I talked to one person, right? Everybody's so impassioned about being able to sell their homes. When I made the offer at the last hearing where we were all here together, I got one phone call. One phone call. And we had a couple of conversations. And I said, well, what number do you have in mind, right? We didn't even, and at that time it was, well, I'll talk to my husband and I'll get back. So despite representations made, there aren't, you know, there's not a lot of people out there saying, hey, I want to sell my house.
Right.
Look, please don't interrupt, but we also have property rights as well.
3 minutes.
Yeah. I know that's really hard to hear.
Okay with the commission?
Yeah, will do. And someone made a statement that, you know, the logistics park zoning is appropriate based on proximity to LPKC. Absolutely correct. We agree with that one. And put on top of that, the proximity to 207th Street, the proximity to the wastewater treatment plant, proximity to all of the infrastructure that's already in place. It's the absolute appropriate location for this. I do want to point out one thing, just because I think the comment was so inappropriate. Saying that we actually prepared the staff report is absolutely, it's insulting to your professional staff. And whoever said that should be apologizing to staff and to this body for suggesting that's the case. Again, we talk about this, RUR, nobody likes to hear it, but everybody looks at these plans and it is a placeholder in Johnson County. Excuse me for a second. So as it relates to trucks on 199th Street, this is a county designated truck route, right? And again, everybody talks about, hey, I reviewed Johnson County plans before I bought my property. Well, it showed 199th Street as being a future 4-lane road. In all of these, I mean, they're all referenced. And so it looks a whole lot like what occurred on 207th Street. The other thing that I would point out is that the truck routing on 189th Street, and Ms. Lynn referenced this, they don't the city of Edgerton has limited jurisdiction given the limited frontage there. Just on the north side of 199th, I think just east of Gardner Road, Gardner annexed like all the way to Clare Road. So I mean, I would be interested, and unfortunately, I wasn't able to get a response this evening when I reached out to someone that I knew in Gardner. But just how many enforcement actions are occurring there? And you know, that this does, all of these infrastructure issues, we do need to have a regional discussion. So a discussion on 199th Street would require Spring Hill, Gardner, Edgerton, Olathe, KDOT, in the county. And we welcome the opportunity to participate in that. We said it last time, but we absolutely want to route trucks appropriately. I just, noted, there's another address on Moonlight. Again, Gardner shows in their comprehensive plan Moonlight as a interchange. There was one comment that someone didn't move here to have 4-lane roads here. And then at the same time, you have to counterbalance this by the multiple representations that, hey, I looked at the county plan. Well, if you looked at the county plan, you should have expected a 4-lane road to be developed here. That has always been the plan. It has always been. And so what you're hearing is, well, I don't like the plan, and I'm going to say, well, RUR doesn't really mean it's a placeholder. Even though it says it all over the Johnson County documents. There was one discussion saying that north of I-35 is the appropriate location for this development. I shared this last time, we're the dominant property owners north of I-35. We have about 5 million square feet left there. And the vast majority of that is rail served property, like Cold Point. So if you go over the Waverly Road Bridge, those are intended to be rail served sites with an intention to develop things like cold storage and manufacturing uses there. The other thing that I would say, that our applications for all of these rezonings, we are a reflection of demand. We're a reflection of demand. So anybody buy anything off of Amazon over Christmas, you know, over the most recent Christmas season, and I'll just put this as a, you know, that's a, you know, a question, I guess, just for the sake of example. But if people were really raising their hands, I bet almost everybody behind me would. Anybody ever order anything online? Does anybody know that Amazon is now buying containers and they have an exclusive agreement with BNSF to carry all of their domestic containers? So we are a reflection of demand. So if the demand isn't met here near the intermodal, where it naturally wants to be with all those Amazon containers coming into Edgerton, just north of I-35 where there's no land left, then the demand is going to be met somewhere, right? It's going to be met in Spring Hill. It's going to be met in Olathe. It's going to be met in Gardner. You know, where is it going to be met? And so in all of those scenarios, all of these worst case scenarios we throw out, if the demand is met in Spring Hill, guess what? Those 50 trucks a day on 199th Street are going to go to thousands. If the demand isn't met here in Edgerton, where it's appropriately met, then all of that traffic has to go somewhere. So then it goes to Gardner, right? It goes somewhere else. It goes to Olathe. And you know, there's that big building up in Olathe with the rack-supported building on the, I call it, I guess, the east side of I-35. But you see it by the way station as you drive down. You drive past that building and it turns it into gravel just past there. So, you know, you would be pushing it to 175th Street, 199th Street. The demand will absolutely be met. We are all of the demand generators, everybody in this room. Anybody who gets a delivery from UPS, which happens to be located at LPKC. Anyone who, you know, gets a delivery from Amazon, they're at LPKC. Jet.com, which is Walmart, they're at LPKC. So the interconnectivity between our buying habits and causing demand to occur, again, we're a reflection of that. And if it's not met here, it's going to be met somewhere. And it's likely somewhere here in Johnson County, Miami County, Franklin County, and the trucks will be coming regardless. So what I propose is that Edgerton is in the best position to take care of that. They have a proven track record with the infrastructure development that occurred on the north side. I don't think anybody objects to the infrastructure on the north side, but where, except for 191st Street, which is the only multi-jurisdictional street in LPKC. So if you leave it to these other cities, if you leave it to Gardner, right, that they would be the likely partner for developing 191st Street on the north side of I-35. They've done nothing except for put up a no truck sign, which is illegal given its proximity to the interchange. So the last thing I will say, I mean, obviously there's a lot of emotion in this room, and we're emotional too. I've been working on this project specifically since 2007. I was here when we made our initial agreements with the city of Edgerton, and we'd like to continue the partnership with Edgerton. But the last thing I will say is that it's hard for people to come up and speak in affirmation. So if you go back to the last meeting where we had one speaker from the city of Edgerton, right? One speaker from the city of Edgerton. What did he say? He came up here with his son standing right here. And he said, you know, when I lived in Edgerton, I had to leave because there were no job opportunities here. So I'm here on behalf of that gentleman. I'm here on behalf of the 4,500 full-time workers that are here, that are proud to work at LPKC, and I'd ask for your approval this evening, and I would stand ready for any questions that you might have.
Thank you. All right, so now we'll allow the public to respond to North Point's responses. You'll be given 2 minutes during this rebuttal time. If you'd like to offer a response, please step up to the podium and state your name and address for the record. As soon as your time up, you must yield the floor to the next person. We will continue in this method until all wishing to respond to North Point's rebuttal may do so. If you are in the overflow space of the library, please tell the staff member present you wish to speak, so I'm going to call you over as space allows. I'd also like to, we also have several other agenda items tonight that we have to get to, and if you're just repeating the same thing over and over for everybody, we understand the arguments, but we just don't want the same repeating comments. If anybody wishes to rebuttal, you have the right to come up to this floor.
Hi, my name's Ben Johnson. I'm a resident on Moonlight. So I used to live on the north side of Gardner. Now I live on the south side of Gardner on Moonlight Road. I knew about the interchange. I'm actually waiting for it so that I don't have to go through all the truck traffic and intermodal traffic at 199 and I-35 to get onto the interstate. Or when I come home from work at night, I have to get off at Old 56 and I-35 because Gardner Road exit is backed up onto the interstate because of all the people that can't get out of Amazon and get onto the interstate to go home. And I know that's a multi-jurisdictional road, but Edgerton told us last time they can't fix the roads, but yet they're gonna redesignate this truck route from here over the next few years to outside of town so the trucks can't come through town because that can harm people. But now it's okay for the intermodal North Point to build warehouses in our neighborhoods and send truck traffic down our roads, or trucks to park on rural roads at nighttime in that placeholder region. I think it's kind of absurd, and I understand the point. You know, we're being told that North Point has rights and they're a victim. North Point's moving in to here. They bought these parcels of land as cattle companies, as land companies, not as North Point. They have addresses in Ottawa, Kansas, and other areas where they pretended to be totally different entities, and then when the time came, they flipped. Now we're North Point, or now we're Wellsville Farms in Riverside, Missouri. I mean, yeah, victim. I mean, it's great to be a victim when you hid what your true identity was, and then at the last minute you changed it, and now you're coming in and telling us it's our fault. We're the ones that are wrong because we already lived here, and we don't want you to expand outside of the intermodal.
Thank you.
Well said.
Jennifer Williams again. I'm another one of those Moonlight Roads, but Moonlight Road goes north quite a ways, all the way south to Hillsdale Lake. And Moonlight Road interchange that you're talking about was in the Gardner plan, which stopped at 199. We're out in the country. And it's not a holding pattern, and it's not a holding designation. It is a way of life. It is a lifestyle. College Boulevard, Johnson County, 119th I-35. Yeah, they grew. Residential growth. They're not a truck park in the middle of the city. They're not a big warehouse district that people don't come and go. People shop. It's families. It's growth. It is part of a plan that fits a community. The city of Edgerton pushes their problems onto us. So, okay, the guy stood here with his little kid and said, I believe because there's no jobs. So you go to our neighborhood and make us leave so you can have jobs? That's not fair. That's not life. North Point pays for the infrastructure, and then they have spike strips in front of the properties of these individual homeowners so that they can't get out unless they are nice and let them. Like this guy said earlier, we let them out, but not the ones that want to come and sell for commercial development. They have to pay the price or else they can't sell. But people didn't call you after the last meeting because we don't want to sell. We want you to go away. You bought. You're not a victim. You have property rights. Your property rights are within the confinement of the law that you bought by that says you're buying in rural residential. We have a zoning criteria out here, and you follow that like the rest of us do. Frank couldn't build a barn unless he called the neighbors and got permission. And you guys would have literally put warehouses in people's backyards. You have property rights, and they stay within the law just like the rest of us. We respect each other. We live together in common decency. County does not agree it's a placeholder. They understand and represent the value of the real life. It's in their plan about the asset that we are. 199th future 4-lane plan, great. Future, where is it? It's not here. 199th, it is on the plan. That's right, but right now 2-lane roads. no shoulders, trucks passing on solid lines because we're going to speed limit, not going fast enough, and so they pass us on solid yellow lines. Gardner doesn't pull over the trucks because it's unsafe, there's nowhere to pull them over, and Johnson County, Brian from the Parks and Rec said it's unfair to them because they're already lost and they
Thank you
don't want
very
to
much.
be frustrated any further.
Sir? Just remind everybody to address the commission more than anything else, so there's not a discussion back and forth.
Yeah, on a rebuttal on the gentleman from North Point, he said one person came up and, after the last meeting, I think of January the 12th, and was interested maybe in selling property. Well, that is the whole point. People are not interested in selling. We don't want to leave this area. These are homes. Some of the, property owners are on 5th generation farms, and they do not want to back up to warehouses and concrete and lights and trucks. The gentleman from North Point was saying, well, if we don't do it here, we're gonna do it somewhere, or somebody's gonna do it somewhere. 4 wrongs has never made a right in my lifetime. And so just because, people don't like it here doesn't mean that people will like it elsewhere. It's not a good fit. That's the whole point. It is a wrong fit. Jobs, the gentleman from North Point mentioned jobs. I've lived in my house since 2007. I don't know one person that works at Amazon or Kubota. Now, I don't know everybody, but I rub shoulders with a lot of people. I have not met one person in my area that works in these plants. Most of them, because I see their license plate, because I'm waiting to get to my house, and they're coming from Amazon, coming across exit 207, headed south, and then they immediately make a left and go north on 35. 95% are from, not from this county. Now, I'm not saying that's bad, and it provides jobs for some, but I don't know anybody in this area. So to tout it as providing jobs in this local area, I think that is a misquoted fact. So, thank you.
Thank you.
A couple things to rebut, so,
Can I have your name, sir?
I'm sorry, Charlie, couple things to rebut, so north of town, if you're down 189th, across 56, and just look north of there, it's wide open. There's nothing out there, it's one house for 38 acres, one house for 160 acres, and they're all built in 1900, 1930. It's not the same landscape at all as it is down here. And, I get it that North Point bought 1,000 acres, but they bought it in the middle of the neighborhood, and collectively, we have more than 1,000 acres, and we did it first. I'm just gonna kind of skip around, but also Amazon being the big, jobs creator, an article from Reuters, Amazon is actively looking at ways to automate many of their jobs, where there'll be very few people working in those warehouses. Even though Johnson County in the area has very, very low unemployment rates, below the natural rate of unemployment, which would be considered fully employed, this isn't a high demand area for jobs. We just get the warehouses with robots in them, and they're really not doing anybody any good, they're just ruining our rural way of life. Thank you.
Thank you. Sir?
Hi, I'm Jennifer Whitlow up here again. I just wanted to comment on a few of the things that the gentleman said. We didn't move to our house to move. That is the point of why he didn't receive a lot of calls. People really want 10 acres and a little house in the country. 5 acres, I mean, that is the dream of many residents. We lived in Gardner for 30 years before we realized that dream. And to have that infringed upon by someone who says they are also a landowner, who suddenly made the city of Edgerton stretch where it doesn't belong, it's a little insulting to us as well. So, we should never have had to have the city council of Edgerton agenda on our radar. We shouldn't have had to be checking. We don't go homestead exit and drive by and see yellow signs. The Mustang project was you know, a code name. It was kept in secret. I mean, look at the way they purchased these properties. Johnson County Land Company, Wellsville Land, Moonlight Farms. That's deceptive. If you wanna buy, put your name on it. You know, stop acting like you're some farmer that has the same kind of interests and, you know, characteristics that that area has. Come clean. If you wanna be a good neighbor, do that. And if you want to do, you know, purchase and, you know, have intermodal, then purchase a large chunk and put a giant buffer, no proximity where you're gonna put a 20-foot tree out to, you know, 3 million square feet of warehouse. That doesn't work. You know, we can't even see the stars if we look to the north now. And I'm at 217th. I looked north last night and it was lit up like a city. I drive to Edgerton tonight. It's as dark as can be, and this is the city of Edgerton. So, you know, I don't want to be forced to move. You know,
Thank you.
go away.
Well said.
Wayne Davis. Yeah, I'd like to respond to just a couple things that was said. One thing was, I think a couple others have already mentioned it too, that, he said that he could buy, when he bought land from people, they willingly sold him land, and he didn't appreciate my term cherry picking land. And as Ray just stated, most of those lands were purchased as the guise of a farm or a land cattle purchase and not, something that would be used for industrial uses. I understand industry is necessary. I used to be a truck driver for a big company, and, you know, I think that in most cities that are well developed, they're in tight quarters and where they're not intersecting. And even in your section here, you mentioned that you want to have a concise districts of certain things like residential, not mixed with intermodal and other things like that, you know. And the other thing is, I live on 199th Street, and I've been in that property for 22 plus years. And when we first moved there, it was designated a 2-lane structure. Just in 2019, they came to us and they told us that they were going to purchase land from all of us, and that was 15 feet of land to put a 6-foot shoulder and ditches on all of our properties. And then in 2019, I sold them some land, but it was only enough to put shoulders on 119th to make it quote unquote safer for truck traffic that is coming to the intermodal.
I appreciate it, thank you. Is there anyone else?
Hello, Dan. Rita Myers. I agree with everything everybody else previously has brought up, and, again, I would just like to bring up, I think it's Patrick was his name, said that, you know, 199th has been planned by the county to be 4 lanes eventually, and people should look into that. First of all, they should notify people, that, hey, by the way, if that's the goal, then we're gonna put warehouses in, and let the, potential buyers know that upfront. He's expecting us to do due diligence. We don't know, yeah, it might be 4 lanes, that doesn't tell us though that it's gonna be warehouses in the future, and that's gonna drop our property values. Second of all, 215, 207th Street, which are both roads that are very, very well used by the semi-trucks now to come in, those are not planned to be 4-lane roads, those aren't even, paved or chip and seal and then gravel. That doesn't address that, you know, those roads are already being used, by these semi-truck drivers, and then making it completely unsafe for those of us that live in that area and just have to drive that area, all the time, and our children. Another thing I'd like to, re-emphasize is again, the infrastructure. Who's gonna pay for the, infrastructure of the road, maintenance and upkeep and upgrades? Yeah, they're gonna do it right there around the warehouse, like you tried to bring up. I'm talking about all the surrounding areas, like 250, like 207, like Waverly Road, that's gravel, those surrounding area roads that they're not gonna pay for, that we're gonna end up having to pay for the maintenance and the upgrade, that they don't have shoulders, they're not paid, and these truck drivers are already using it. And then my question is this company gonna get a tax abatement like the, intermodal has? So they're not gonna be paying taxes that's gonna go towards these, increased road usage around the areas, further out that are affecting all the rest of us public. So who's
Thank
gonna
you
pay
very
for that?
much.
It's gonna be the public, not them.
Is there anyone else who'd like to speak? Is there anything that hasn't been already spoken?
Tim Smith, 21175 Moonlight Road. You know, whenever, North Point got up to speak, he said, North Point also has property owner rights. And I agree with that. But his rights are no different than our rights as property owners as well. When I bought my property, 7 years ago, I bought rural property. I bought exactly what I thought it should be, right? I'm not trying to rezone it to be something else. And let's say that I did. It's not the obligation of Edgerton to go ahead and rezone that land. When they bought all this land that they bought, the 1,000 acres, they bought rural land. It doesn't mean just because they're North Point that automatically this should be rezoned to something but what it actually is.
Anybody else?
Hi, Johnny, I'm 21015 Midnight Road, 117 properties. This hasn't been addressed. I'm one of the newest people that moved to this area. We built a house, we built a ranch, also in good faith with regards to the concerns. I rapidly got to know my neighbors because we sort of stand up now. And I've met a lot of people about faith. When I prayed about this, what I got was, it's no coincidence, the golden criteria are no different to the golden rule. What we've heard from a lot of people here is, would you vote for this if this was overruled for you? I don't think anybody in their moral conscience would do this to someone who's invested their lives, their savings, all their assets. Use that man. Thank you.
Anyone else? Is there anyone else in the library?
Karen, give someone else, here.
All right, so we'll give North Point one final opportunity to respond.
Also, I think there's some questions that would be, for staff to answer as well.
Okay.
There'd be some questions that the staff could answer as well. So, I don't know if that's.
Again, Patrick Robinson for North Point Development. You know, you heard a number of times that, reference to the Johnson County master plan, right? And the references that I was making to that is if you heard it once, you heard it 5, or you've heard it 10 times. So while I don't expect everyone looked at it, a number of people who gave testimony tonight said, hey, I looked at that plan, I knew it was RUR. It is it's a holding designation. You know, I knew that 199th Street was gonna be a 4-lane road. Well, it was gonna be a 4-lane road for all 5-acre parcels be lined up and down it, with single-family residential. There would be employment zones, right? So we'll go back and we'll look at College Boulevard, right? If there was a reference, hey, we remember when that was gravel. Well, College Boulevard has 70,000 people work there every day, more than downtown Kansas City. It's an employment center. But up and down there, there's also residential along these major 4-lane roadways. So I mean, I would suggest if we knew there was going to be a 4-lane road, people are going to have to work somewhere too. I mean, I don't know if anybody remembers. I think 189th Street was dubbed the South Metro Connector. Right, it was going to be a major roadway I think 6, 8 lanes, something like that, at one point in time. And I think those plans were, around way more than 20 years ago, in that regard. But you wouldn't expect to have all these 4-lane roads just to have, or to have only 5-acre residential parcels out against them. People have to work somewhere. The request before you tonight is to allow people to work right at the interchange. Right where there are a lot of objections, as it relates to infrastructure. The roadway is built. It's a 4-lane divided road as you come down. It's, it looks like any other arterial roadway in Johnson County. There was a reference to, I see a lot of those workers that are not from here. We have data on this. There are 1,500 high school students per year that graduate from high school and don't move on to college in unincorporated Miami, Douglas, Franklin, and Johnson counties, all within a 28-minute radius of here. So we're working with Mr. Altman to set up high school internship programs to identify logistics as a career path. But that's 1,500 people that are from here. They are your kids' high school classmates that decided to stay close to home. We know the profile of these workers. They like to farm and fish. Full-time benefits are more important than a lot of times than pay, because they want to help out on the family farm. That's what we know about these workers. These are your neighbors. These are USD 231 graduates. These are graduates of Spring Hill schools and all of the schools around here. So that's who's working here. I heard someone say that it doesn't belong here. That's like saying Edgerton doesn't belong here. Right? This plan commission works on behalf of the interests of the citizens of Edgerton. Right? And I would contend that Edgerton does belong here. The annexation did occur. Again, this parcel specifically tonight, we're right at the interchange. This is an appropriate use for this. And again, it was mentioned, the 4-lane road doesn't mean warehouses. Well, the last thing I did want to touch on was that, as I referenced before, that, I've made the offer and people said, well, they don't want to leave. It's pretty difficult in that context to say, Edgerton absolutely belongs here. Edgerton has every right to be here. The Plan Commission representing Edgerton has every right to be here. And I take that in context that when people are saying they don't want to leave, it's like, well, they also don't want to compromise with Edgerton, right? There's no proposed other land use that makes a lot of sense, especially for these parcels, given where it's sandwiched between the wastewater treatment plant and it has the infrastructure there. So again, we request your approval this evening. We agree with staff's recommendations, and we hope they make a favorable recommendation.
What about the
Yeah, I answer your
LLCs?
questions.
Thank you very much. Staff, anything or have any comments?
Sure, so I just wanted to make a few comments, planning commissioners, this is Beth. So there were a couple of things questions that I thought would be helpful to answer, or pieces of information to clarify. So the Johnson County Carnot plan that has been referenced a couple of times, including the designation for 199th Street. Obviously, there's a difference between what the street is constructed as today versus what is it actually stated in the Carnot plan. And the Carnot plan has been in Johnson County, and it's including the designation for 199th Street for decades. So I do want to emphasize the fact that it is not a plan that came, they did do a recent shoulder project, that is true, but that plan and its designation for 199th Street existed long before that. With regard, there's a lot of discussion about truck routing, and I will say that in the number of calls that the city of Edgerton fields, I know both from staff perspective and an elected official perspective, we absolutely agree that the trucks should use the infrastructure that us and our partners have built with hundreds of millions of dollars. And we have continued to ask our neighboring jurisdictions, both unincorporated county and the other jurisdictions, to help us direct that, but we cannot control roads that are outside of our jurisdiction. The other, there was a reference to a term that I'm not sure I know the definition of, so I apologize if I'm misunderstanding what it is, but someone had called something about site strips. And I think that maybe they're referencing the the ability to connect to new infrastructure. So that while the infrastructure is paid for, so for example, the roadway for 207th Street and Homestead Lane, the city of Edgerton received a grant from the KDOT, from the Kansas Department of Transportation, and then partnered with North Point Development for the rest of the funding for that project. That project is a public infrastructure project that the city of Edgerton remains control of the access. In no way, shape, or form does North Point decide who has access to that roadway and who does not. So I think maybe that's what the reference to spike strips is because it would seem like it was a reference that North Point would control that, and that is not true. As I mentioned, the city has worked with our partners. There's been a lot of partners over the course of LTKC as far as funding of the infrastructure. So that has included funding from the Kansas Department of Transportation, it's included funding from the city of Edgerton, it's included funding from Johnson County, it's included funding from North Point. In no time, in no project or logistics park in the city to date has it ever been assessed to a property owner. There's not been a benefit district, there's not been a piece of infrastructure that has been required to be paid for by a local resident. And then the last piece related to the taxes, I wanted to just pull up and reference the economic impact study that was used on the previous one, simply so that it gives you an example of what that looks like. So let me get to that 1 second. So this chart that we did for the previous rezonings gives an example of what is the annual, on an annual basis, the property tax that is generated if the previous rezoning, obviously not this one, but using it as an example. Today, the current tax generation, which was done on their parcels in their current zoning classification or current use, if they would get abated, like similar to other LPKC projects, then they do generate taxes even during the abatement period for all of the taxing jurisdictions. And then post-tax generation, that would happen after 10 years. So wanted to clarify what the funding is. You will notice, for example, 231, their capital mill outlay, which is 8 mills, day one remains with the school district at its full amount. So that's just, on the previous parcel, would have been just less than $1 million for 231 generated from those properties.
All right, thank you very much. We've now heard all the testimony, related rebuttals, questions being answered by the applicant. I'll close the public hearing and entertain any questions or discussion from the Planning Commission members. And I'd like to remind the Planning Commission members that this is about rezoning. It is not necessarily about the infrastructure. It is not necessarily about what is being built on it eventually. All those concerns can be addressed later with public hearings. It can be addressed, and requirements can be added if we want to change what we need to. This is about rezoning the land that touches the intermodal. I believe that, harsh word to say, I guess, but naive to believe that after a $30 million bridge is built, that it would not go to the other side of it as well. There is no going north. That's over a $100 million bridge to go above 56. There's no going west. The Rock Quarry and Bull Creek Park is west. Gardner is east. They have to go across I-35 at this point, in my opinion. The intermodal is going to continue to grow. Whether the trucks are coming down I-35, it will take them. I drive around the city all over. There are warehouses from North KC all the way down to Olathe that is right in the middle of residential neighborhood, not in the middle of residential neighborhood, but across 56. They have those two warehouses over there that are across the highway from residential neighborhoods. That area is being improved by the city of Olathe. Cities grow, and I know it's harsh to see that coming, but we have to weigh the rights of both sides. And the citizens of Edgerton, county, the state, there's a lot of jobs, revenue. So I just hope you guys understand that we are talking about the rezoning of the land only. The land that is right next to our infrastructure that's already been built. Commissioners have any questions or comments, please speak
Mr.
up.
Chair, if I could jump in.
Sorry.
I'm sorry, Commissioner, this is Lee Hendrick, City Attorney. I just wanted to note one thing. This is something that wasn't fully delved into in the earlier discussion, and I think it's important that we do so now and moving forward. Certainly your job is as a recommending body, and that means you're making a recommendation, as you well know, to the City Council. But I think, I know that part of that is is also providing a rationale to the governing body of the decisions you're making and why you made them. So while I think it's clear that Mrs. Crowe probably didn't speak for a week before both of these last two hearings in order to save her voice to go through all of this, and I'm not asking you to go through her work in its entirety, I would certainly use that as a guideline, as a guidance to discuss your thoughts on these and to provide a little additional information in the minutes to the governing body, whether it's an approval or denial. If your answer on these parcels is similar, you can have that discussion and then say, we feel similarly on, or the person making the motion, I feel similarly on the next property that did the first. And I would also appreciate it if you have thoughts on the earlier decisions, whether you think similarly on these or differently, that you make that clear so that that is provided to the city council, that rationale is provided to the city council. So, thank you.
So this is Tim Berger. So we being asked to defend what our decision is one way or another?
Not necessarily defend it.
Is that the most requirement? Because that was not a requirement before.
Well, as I stated earlier, we got into those and the vote started occurring, and after that ended, I came back to it and said, you know, we don't have that guidance, and that's an important function of what you're doing. So, if you could, that gives additional information to the city council for your thoughts, as opposed to just a yay or nay.
So does any of the commissioners have any questions, comments, concerns for staff, the applicant?
Yeah, I just that part right there. If I have to prepare comments, I'd like to go through it all and type it all out and get it on the record. I mean, I don't want to just say off the cuff, we've heard this. We've heard the arguments, it's the same thing, and it sounds like we're being now directed to come up with a more positive, that's how I feel, like a more positive outcome for one side versus the other. So it's a different requirement. I've never had a justified decision day or night before. So that's just my opinion, but if someone else got an opinion, I'd like to hear it too.
Well, and if I can speak again, this is Lee Hendricks. If you look at the requirements of this determination, part of this is providing, based on those factors, your rationale. I would agree that earlier that wasn't covered. We jumped into this, and as I said, once you were about 4 of them into it, I recognize that's not being provided. I wasn't going to stop you there. I was just saying, as you move forward, if you could comment on that. I'm not coming up with anything new. You've made decisions as a body before that aren't this type where you haven't provided that rationale. But I believe that is a part of the decision-making process that you have now in front of you.
I would also echo, Tim, that oftentimes in your discussion, you very much have the dialogue about the rationale related to those decisions that you all have made as a body over the course of time. That's bad. Sorry.
Yeah, I'm not asking for a presentation. I'm saying that it's part of that discussion. Again, anything that you can give to the city council is beneficial to the process moving forward.
Is the chairman voting on this?
I only vote if it's a tie. So I can give my opinion as to why I believe it's a good or a bad idea to approve or deny. So right now
So I have a question, is the current zoning maxed out for space? Is there no more space available in the current zone?
I don't believe there is for the large scale warehouses.
Not that they have to be all together, but we're talking about all these different zones now, these different parcels, is there?
I guess the way that I would answer that is that there is not a requirement for, each individual property owner to make an application for rezoning for a particular purpose. So for example, you've heard from the applicant who stated that this particular parcel is located along the 207th Street corridor. The infrastructure is already existing. In some of the other locations in the logistics park, there are additional infrastructure costs that would have to occur. So it is not, and really city attorney can comment on this, but it is requirement that something happen before one another. It is, the applicant's ability to make an application for any property that they own.
I agree, yeah.
I guess that's what you're saying, I get what you're saying.
But I think it is important to recognize the proximity, and you heard this from the applicant, and you heard it in the staff report, is the proximity for these particular parcels to the interchange and to infrastructure that is already built.
Tim, did you have any more questions or comments?
No, not right now, no.
Deb, do you have any questions or comments?
Not at this time.
Jeremy, would you have any comments or questions?
Not pertaining to this rezoning, but I do have a couple of questions for, city and honor that need to be, done separately.
What? Being done separately.
Hold on just a second, I got a teenager coming in because his bedroom's downstairs and I'm downstairs too. Just a second.
All right, while we're waiting there, Charlie, do you have any questions or comments?
Not at this time.
We'll wait for Jeremy.
But my 17-year-old may dart in and out of the corner of the screen here, but, he knows he needs to keep boys to a minimum.
All right, do you have any questions or comments for the applicant or staff?
No.
I'd just like to remind everybody that, I mean, it's literally across the street from already developed land. The roads are developed off Homestead. I can't make a motion myself, but, we have, pretty much now, if nobody else has any questions or comments for applicant or staff.
We can ask you a question?
Sorry,
Oh, I
public
said
comments
nobody else.
closed.
Sorry.
This is just for the planning.
Okay, got it.
So we've concluded our discussion on this item. We will now move on to the vote if staff does not have anything else. So I'll entertain a motion to recommend approval, denial, or continue rezoning application ZA 2021-01, rezoning for one parcel of land located at 32425 West 207th Street.
Charlie Crooks, I'll make a motion to approve.
All right, Charlie, do we have a second?
This is Deb, I'll second approval.
All in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
This is Tim, I oppose.
It's 3-1.
And I think there's, if you want a justification, based on what I went through, and I can go through the notes again later and get more detailed one, but there's existing zoning right now, built for this, and we're looking at rezoning. I'm not necessarily saying we exhausted all the, other efforts just yet. That's my opinion.
We appreciate
There's
that.
different criteria there, and I was looking at criteria 16. One of them would say tax revenue, the anticipated license parts to use the facilities where it's located in another community. If we don't do this, but there's available, zones now and states now, it wouldn't have to necessarily leave the community. And I get the argument that's being presented that, hey, it's just right across the road, but, my opinion, there's a zone that's already existing there that's on that other side of the road, we could use that.
All right, well, we appreciate your comments there, and we'll leave the other one down. ZA 2021-01 passed, 3-1. Is there a motion to recommend approval, denial, or to continue rezoning application ZA 2021-02, rezoning for one parcel of land located at 32295 West 207th Street?
Make a motion to approve.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
That was Deb and Charlie.
Yes.
All opposed?
Aye.
Aye.
I will vote, I approve. Or in favor. ZA 2021-02 has been approved. Is there a motion to recommend approval, denial, or to continue rezoning application ZA 2021-03, rezoning for one parcel of land located at 32285 West 207th Street?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Is there a second?
I second it.
This is Charlie. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
This is Tim, aye.
Jerry, aye.
I will vote in favor for ZA 2021-03. ZA 2021-03 has passed. Been approved. Is there a motion to recommend approval, denial, or to continue rezoning application ZA 2021-04, rezoning for one parcel of land located at 32330 West 213th Street?
Make a motion.
The motion to approve, deny, or table?
To approve.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Aye.
Aye.
I vote in favor. ZA 2021-04 has passed. Is there a motion to recommend approval, denial, or continue rezoning application ZA 2021-05, rezoning for one parcel of land generally located at the northwest corner of 213th Street and Kill Creek Road, or South Kill Creek Road?
Make a motion to approve.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
Aye.
I vote in favor for ZA 2021-05. ZA 2021-05 has been approved. Any recommendations made by the planning commission tonight related to the rezoning application ZA 2020-01 through 05 will be heard by the governing body at the March 11th, 2021 City Council meeting. This concludes the action taken on rezoning application ZA 2021-01 through 05. The commission has further business to discuss. You may stay if you wish, or you can choose to leave